for the next stage of its development. Now, all butterflies and moths go through a change, what's called a metamorphosis. They start with an egg that hatches into a caterpillar or larva, and that goes into a pupa or chrysalis, and from that comes the adult. So this is stage 3 beginning. It's hung itself up like that, hanging vertically down from the branch, and very shortly it'll begin to split from the head. You can see the muscular action starting. Look very carefully now, and there the split appears, sliding upwards. It looks almost like another caterpillar erupting from the old skin, but it isn't. It's a totally different stage. It's working the skin off all the way up to the top. And that skin will just dry and fall to the ground. There's the very last bit of it ready to go. And those last few movements are designed just to throw that skin away. But shortly now, this pupa will lose all its motion. It'll harden in the air, and it'll lie apparently completely dormant. Look in your nettle patch then, and you'll see a little group, perhaps, like this, of what might be dead leaves hanging. Something you'd ignore, something that looks quite dead. But inside, a complete restructuring is taking place. A butterfly is forming within that case. In time, the pupa is ready to hatch, and it splits from the bottom. That dry husk opens, and an adult butterfly, all crumpled and new to the world, begins to emerge. We've changed species now. This is a Camberwell beauty. And we've changed the plant, too. It's on a sallow bush. As soon as it's free from that husk of the old pupa, it begins to pump fluid into its wings, and slowly the coiled up, crumpled wings begin to unfold, and in the air they harden and dry. It's a rare butterfly, this, but probably one of the most beautiful of all. And not surprisingly, it goes straight to a buddleia bush. Look at it closely and you can see the structure of the scales on the wings. Literally thousands of them to the square inch. Beautifully overlapped and so arranged that you get iridescence happening. Incredible patterns that change color as you look. I've got a most lovely iridescent butterfly here. Now that's a morpho butterfly from South America. Most gorgeous thing. If you look down on those from above, you can actually see them from the air flying over the Amazon jungle. And the tragedy of it is that because they're so lovely, people kill them by the thousand to make perfectly hideous bits of jewelry and boxes and decorations to sell in the shops. Now, we're going to look at a community situation. We're going right away from butterflies. And here is a very specialized wasp's nest from South America. It's called a card wasp. It's got a tiny entrance at the bottom that's big enough for one wasp, so one wasp alone can guard it. And inside, a mass of cells. And we're going to look at one of these, and you'll see how it works. This is actually a different kind of wasp. This isn't the South American card wasp, but it's an African, a hunter wasp. It adds a new dimension to the expression wasp-waisted, too. But so many wasps have the same kind of life pattern, and so many of them build their nests with card or paper, even our old familiar European ones. And here they're starting the cells, building up the nest. Now, the cells here have got eggs in at the top because these are the most recent ones. Further down, you can see that they've already pupated. Those big bulges at the bottom are grubs which have got onto the pupa stage. And in the middle are the grubs which are in a halfway stage. They're more or less full-grown grubs, but not quite ready to pupate. And all these worker wasps are bringing in food and feeding them, stuffing it down into each cell, checking them out, cleaning out the cell, servicing them generally. All the eggs have been laid by one queen, and all her offspring are running the setup. Bit by bit, the nest will increase in size. A lovely view here of the eggs up at the top. And very soon, those at the bottom will be free to fly and join in the melee. Not all wasps lead this elaborate communal life. Some are loners. They lay their eggs, providing for the young, and leave them, push off. And this little alder wood wasp is a perfect example. She's forcing her ovipositor through the bark of an alder tree. And the ovipositor is simply a double drill with a saw end. And she passes the eggs down it. But the saw end is important. She's gone through the bark, and what we can show you now is what happens inside. Now, this has been specially cut away so that you can see the eggs traveling out, forced down. Now, normally that saw would be cutting a little trench in the wood immediately under the bark, and those eggs would be laid in the trench. But this is done so that you can see what happens. The eggs are laid, and she withdraws the ovipositor. She's about 1 inch long. The ovipositor's about 1.5 inches. She's got to stand on tiptoes, lift her abdomen up to clear it. And then that thing sticking out at the back will be wrapped round it as a sheath to protect the ovipositor before she flies away. 8 to 10 weeks later, when the eggs have hatched, the larva will look like this, just chomping its way through, making its own tunnel towards the outside world. The spectacular praying mantis, praying because of the attitude of its front legs, which are held up rather in an attitude of prayer. But she's laying too, and quite different from the wood wasp. She too has got an ovipositor, and that's different. It's shaping a foam. The eggs are laid into the foam, and it's shaping it onto the branch. If you look very closely, you'll see some little cerci. They look like tiny legs at the top. And they're really the touch equivalent of rear-view mirrors, just to check up on the situation and see that all's well. That will harden, and the eggs will be safe inside until they hatch. So here we've got an egg case. It's all dried, and this egg case has been hatching little mantises. If you look at the bottom of it there, you'll see where the stick runs through, and if I turn him over, you'll see where they hatched out from. 150 of these little mantises. And here is one of them. This little character that's walking up my wrist is 3 weeks old, and in 10 weeks' time he'll be a strapping great thing, 7 inches long, one of the biggest species of mantis in the world. He comes from South Africa. But watch him walking there. You can see that his praying legs aren't used a great deal for walking. He tends rather to sit up and pray and walk on the back too, but all the body segments are precisely the same as every other insect. One of the points that helps you study a lot with these insects is that they do have similarities, a sort of basic formula about not just their body sections, but about things like their mouths. Now, the mouths of all insects are basically the same, but obviously adapted for the way they live. To start with, they don't have a mouth in the way we think of a mouth with teeth and everything in it. It's just a hole down which the food goes. And on top of that, there's what would correspond to a top lip, which is called a labrum. And they have a split lower lip, rather like this, which are called maxillae. And under that, they have a secondary lower lip, which is almost a flap that'll close everything up, and that is called a labium. On the edges of these, are a couple of feelers which are called palps, and they manipulate the food into the mouth. And then on either side are a couple of really strong pincers, which are the mandibles. And certainly the praying mantis is a marvelous example of an animal to watch this kind of thing working with. And so we'll have a close look at that, but I want you to see a lot of other different animals that have the same equipment, differently used. Now, we saw him earlier, a butterfly larva, simply using his pincers, his mandibles. Now, here's a variation on the theme. This is a leaf-cutter ant, and it's using its mandibles just like the caterpillar, but for a completely different purpose. It's going through a leaf, just like an old-fashioned tin opener, and those chitinous mouth parts are tremendously hard, almost like a power tool, cutting out beautiful semicircular pieces from the leaf. But you'll notice that the ant isn't eating the leaf. And this is the extraordinary thing about this animal. They work away on a shrub like this, on leaves, cutting pieces out, and they take them back to their lair. And on those pieces of leaf, they'll grow fungus. They don't eat the leaf at all. They will eat the fungus that grows on it at a much later date. Our old friend, the praying mantis, mandibles again chewing up a butterfly, and the top lip, the labrum, working together with them. Perhaps the most extreme mouthpart development of all is a butterfly. This is a skipper, with a tremendous long drinking straw that it can thrust right down into a flower to draw out the liquid nectar. So long it has to be coiled up like a watch spring. This one's more like an underwater lion at its kill. This is the great water beetle, Dytiscus beetle, eating a tadpole. Similar again to the mantis, chewing away. And this one's really specialized. Do you know what it is? Well, it's the larva of those great big beautiful dragonflies that you see buzzing around, but it's an underwater larva. Now, this is how it's so specialized. You imagine that this is its head and you're looking up from underneath it, from bottom left, so that here you've got its mouth with the mandibles there, big eyes up the top here, and these maxillae here with their tiny little palps on the end. Now here's where the specialization starts. There's a little plate in insects which is usually very, very small, and it's called a prementum, and it's behind the labium on that first drawing. But on this animal, the prementum is very, very long indeed, so that this piece, the labium, when it's fixed onto it, comes way down here, and there's a hinge there, and on the end of it are these labial palps, which in this animal are developed into a pair of real hunting claws, so that that whole specialized thing will swing back like this and swing out like a mask, so that its whole lower lip is being used actually to take in its prey. Now let's watch it. It's waiting there, all ready to move off. And just look at the bottom of its head. You see that? The prementum has a hinge. Look at that, it's called a stickleback. Here's another one that's called a tadpole. And all with that curious mechanism. Well, when they nourish themselves, those larvae are ready to hatch out into the real beautiful insect. And they ascend a reed like this, and they wait for their moment. Now, I believe that although this is a common enough sight, it used to be much more common than it is now, it's one of the most spectacular things you can see in animal life. The emergence of a great insect in a sort of backward somersault out of the dry shell of that larva that's just been eating in that strange way in the bottom of the pond. They're getting scarce now because people have been poisoning these ponds in order to destroy mosquitoes. And sure, they've destroyed the mosquitoes, but they've destroyed practically every other living thing in the ponds. And that's why a sight like this is so rare now. And it was so common when I was a kid. Well, I know the score perfectly well. There are two sorts of people, those that can get on with creepy crawlies and those that can't. And nothing I can do or say will make any difference to people who just don't happen to like them. We've looked at some interesting things, but we've only lifted the corner and just had a little tiny peep. There's so much more to it than that. But think, next time you swat something, what a wonderful piece of mechanism it was. Goodbye now.